My name is Daniel Carter. I'm 33 years old, and for as long as I can remember, I've been the son my parents didn't quite know what to do with. Last October, I sent them the most important invitation of my career. It wasn't a birthday dinner. It wasn't a school fundraiser. It wasn't one of those participation certificate things my father likes to joke about. It was an official invitation from the United States Department of Education. I stared at my phone for a full minute before pressing send. Hi everyone. I've been selected as a finalist for National Teacher of the Year. The ceremony is in Washington, D.C., October 15th. It would mean a lot if you were there. I attached the PDF with the gold seal, the formal letterhead, the words Secretary of Education printed in bold. My father replied the next morning. 11 words. Just a lowly teacher's award. Not flying for that. My older sister, Claire, chimed in seconds later. Sorry, Dan. Big client dinner. Can't cancel. My mother didn't type a single word. She simply liked Claire's message. I read the screen 3 times. I wasn't surprised. I'd stopped expecting surprises from them years ago. So I typed back 3 words. That's fine. But what they didn't know, what none of them could have predicted, was that 48 hours later, my father would be sitting in a crowded French restaurant, halfway through a toast to Claire's promotion, when his face would drain of color, because on his phone screen, live on CNN, broadcast to millions, was me, standing under stage lights in Washington, D.C., shaking hands with the Secretary of Education, and for the first time in his life, my father would realize he had miscalculated his son. What happened between that message and that moment is a story about invisibility, about what families choose to see, and about what happens when the whole country sees you first. Let me take you back 3 weeks to the day a single envelope changed everything. Before I take you back to that envelope, let me say this. If you've ever been the child who showed up quietly while someone else got the spotlight, if you've ever achieved something big and heard it reduced to "that's nice," this story might hit close to home. If it does, consider subscribing. Not out of pity, only if you genuinely connect with it. And I'm curious, where are you watching from right now? What time is it there? Drop it in the comments. All right, let's go back to the afternoon everything shifted. 3 weeks before that message, I was alone in room 214 at Jefferson Middle School, wiping dry erase marker off a board that had seen 8 years of my life. The hallway lights had already dimmed. Custodians were rolling carts past the lockers. My classroom walls were covered in handwritten notes from students, crumpled construction paper, crooked handwriting, misspelled thank yous, none of them framed, just taped up. Because that's what mattered to me. My phone buzzed. Mom. Daniel. Sweetheart, she said brightly. Claire closed the Henderson merger today. The big one. Her name's already circulating for early partnership. I smiled. Because I meant it. That's great. Mom. Tell her congratulations. Oh. We're doing a dinner Sunday. Your father's invited everyone. He's so proud. Of course he was. That sounds nice, I said. There was a shuffle on her end. Dishes. Movement. Background noise. Oh, honey. I need to call Claire back. She's waiting. I actually wanted to tell you. The line went dead. I stood there staring at my reflection in the dark smartboard. This wasn't new. At my master's graduation 3 years ago, they arrived halfway through the ceremony. Traffic, Dad said. The next morning, I overheard him on the phone bragging to Uncle Ron. We barely made it back in time for Claire's firm dinner. You should have seen her. Absolute powerhouse. They had left my ceremony early. They never mentioned it. On my 30th birthday, no one called. 3 days later, Mom texted Danny. Was your birthday last week? Time flies. Lunch soon? We never scheduled it. Last Christmas, Claire announced her promotion to senior associate. Dad uncorked the bottle of scotch he'd been saving for 15 years. When I mentioned my students had raised enough money to replace the library's torn novels, he nodded vaguely and asked Claire about her bonus structure. That's how it always worked. Claire's report cards went on the fridge. Mine went into a drawer. Not because I performed worse. Because hers translated into status. Mine translated into service. And service, in my father's world, was secondary. I learned to stop announcing things, to let my achievements exist quietly. But that envelope on my desk, thick, cream paper with an official federal seal, felt different. I picked it up again that night after the call ended, ran my thumb across the embossed letters. National Teacher of the Year Selection Committee. Inside, the letter read, Dear Mr. Carter, We are honored to inform you that you have been selected as one of 4 finalists in the United States for National Teacher of the Year, 4 finalists. Nationwide. The ceremony would be held in Washington, D.C. Broadcast live. The Secretary of Education presenting the award. I sat down slowly in my desk chair. For a long time, I just looked at the wall of student letters. At least someone thought I mattered. Then I read the final paragraph again. Your nomination was submitted by a distinguished educator whose identity, per tradition, will remain confidential until the ceremony. This educator has nominated only 6 teachers in the past 3 decades. All 6 were selected as winners. 6 nominations, 6 winners. Someone with influence believed in me enough to stake their reputation on it, and for the first time in years, I felt something I hadn't allowed myself to feel with my family. Hope. Maybe this would be the thing they couldn't dismiss. Maybe if they saw the official seal, the words United States, the weight of it, maybe this time, they would show up. I folded the letter carefully and slid it back into the envelope. I didn't know yet how hard that hope was about to hit the ground, but I was about to find out. I carried that envelope everywhere for a week. In my work bag, on my kitchen counter, on my nightstand. I read it so many times the fold at the center began to soften. Every time I imagined sending the message to my family, I felt the same tension settle in my chest, not fear of failure, fear of dismissal. The first draft was 3 paragraphs long. I explained how rare the nomination was, how few teachers even made it to state level, how the Secretary of Education would personally present the award. I deleted it. Too defensive, too eager. The second draft was almost careless. Hey, I'm up for an award in D.C. Wanna come? I deleted that too. It sounded like I was apologizing for taking up space. By draft 11, I stripped it down to facts. Hi, everyone. I've been selected as a finalist for National Teacher of the Year. The ceremony is October 15th in Washington, D.C. It would mean a lot if you could be there. I've attached the official invitation with details. Daniel, I attached the PDF Department of Education letterhead. Gold seal. Formal language about honoring America's finest educators. My thumb hovered over send for a full minute. I didn't press it because I knew something. If they said no, it wouldn't surprise me. If they ignored it, it wouldn't shock me. But if they laughed, that would still sting. I pressed send. Then I waited. I made dinner. Checked my phone. Graded papers. Checked my phone again. By midnight, the message showed. Read by all 3 of them. No reply. I fell asleep with my phone face up on the pillow beside me. At Chaptapatrizet Shidoya. M. It buzzed. 3 gray dots appeared under Dad's name. Typing. Stopped. Typing again. The dots vanished. Then the message appeared. 11 words. Just a lowly teacher's award. Not flying for that. I stared at it. Read it twice. Then a second notification. Claire. Sorry. Dan. Big client dinner that night. Can't cancel. You understand. A smiley face at the end. I waited for Mom. For a defense. For a we'll celebrate when you're back. Instead, a small thumbs up appeared under Claire's message. Mom had liked it. That was it. I set my phone down slowly. Picked it back up. Typed 3 words. That's fine. No punctuation. No emotion. Then I turned the screen face down, and something inside me shifted. Not anger. Not sadness. Something colder. More final. 2 days before my flight to Washington. Mom called. Sunday dinner. She said, your father wants everyone together. Claire has more exciting news. Of course, she did. I almost declined. Instead, I said, I'll be there. My parents' house looked exactly the same: brick colonial. Manicured hedges. Polished brass handle on the front door. Inside, the dining table was set with the good china. Crystal glasses. Candles. The decanter Dad only used when something worth celebrating happened. Claire was already seated at the head of the table. Glowing. Danny, she said, air kissing my cheek. So glad you made it. Her husband Ethan gave me a quiet nod. He'd always been an observer in this family present. Careful. Neutral. Dad stood and raised his glass. Before we eat, I want to toast Claire, youngest partner track candidate in Harrison and Blythe history. Mom beamed like she'd personally negotiated the deal. Tell him about the compensation structure. Dad urged. Claire laughed modestly. It's just substantial. 7 figures. Dad clarified proudly. Projected within 2 years. The table fell silent. Everyone looked at me. That's impressive, I said evenly. And I meant it. Dad turned toward me. So, Daniel, still teaching, middle schoolers. 7th and 8th grade. He nodded slowly, as if confirming a disappointing diagnosis. And that little ceremony you mentioned. When is that again? Tuesday? Ah. He swirled his wine. Teacher appreciation thing. It's the National Teacher of the Year ceremony. Right. He waved his hand dismissively. Cute. Claire tilted her head. So what does a teacher make these days? Ballpark, I knew exactly where this was going. About 52,000. She exchanged a glance with Ethan. That's less than my quarterly bonus. Ethan shifted uncomfortably. Dad leaned back. You had potential, Daniel. You always did. You could have built something. I did build something, I said calmly. A classroom, Claire said lightly. Hundreds of kids who read above grade level because someone stayed after school with them. Dad shook his head. You're smart. You just chose small. There it was. Not failure. Small. Mom leaned forward. We just don't want you stuck. That apartment you're in, what about it? It's modest. Claire offered. In a sad way, I set my fork down. My bills are paid. I said. For now, Dad replied. Silence settled over the table. Then Ethan cleared his throat quietly. For what it's worth, he said, looking directly at me. My high school history teacher is the reason I applied to law school. Teachers matter. Claire shot him a sharp look. He didn't retract it. I filed that away. Dad refilled his glass. Well, as long as you're happy playing hero in a classroom. I'm not playing anything. Dessert arrived. I hadn't touched my main course. I stood. I should go. Early flight. Flying economy, Claire asked with a faint smirk. I paused at the doorway. The Department of Education covers travel, Dad snorted. For teachers, first class. I said calmly. It's a national award. Broadcast live. The room went quiet. Dad's fork hovered midair. Broadcast, he asked. Yes. I met his eyes. You'd know that if you'd read the invitation. No one spoke. Claire's smile faltered. I put on my coat. Congratulations again, Claire. And I walked out. For the first time, I didn't feel smaller. I felt measured. And very, very certain. I was halfway home when my phone rang. Grandma Evelyn. I answered immediately. Daniel, she said. Her voice steady and warm. I heard about the dinner. Of course she had. News traveled fast in our family. Especially the kind that wasn't meant for me. I'm fine, I said. There was a pause. You don't sound fine, she replied. I exhaled slowly. With her. I didn't have to pretend. They think it's small. I said. The award. A soft hum on the other end. Not disagreement. Not surprise. Did you read the nomination letter carefully, she asked. Yes. And the part about the educator who's nominated 6 teachers in 30 years. My hand tightened slightly around the steering wheel. Yes. And that all 6 of them when I pulled into a quiet side street and stopped the car. How do you know that, I asked. Grandma Evelyn had been a principal for 35 years. She'd taken over failing schools no one else wanted and turned them around. Teachers still sent her holiday cards a decade after she retired. Let's just say I still have friends in certain circles, she said lightly. My pulse picked up. Grandma, I nominated you, she said simply. The words didn't land all at once. They settled. You, I asked quietly. I waited. She continued. 6 years ago. I considered it. But you weren't ready. You were still trying to prove yourself to people who weren't looking. That hit harder than anything Dad had said at dinner. I only submit names when I'm certain, she added. The committee knows that. 6 nominees. I said. 6 winners. I leaned back against the headrest, staring at the dark windshield. You believed I'd win, I asked. I don't nominate potential, she replied. I nominate impact. My throat tightened, but I kept my voice steady. They think it's a teacher appreciation thing. They're allowed to think whatever they want, she said. The truth doesn't need their permission. She paused. I'll be in Washington. You don't have to, I will be there, she said firmly. Front row. Silence stretched between us, not uncomfortable, but grounding. Daniel, she added softly, You built something real. Don't let anyone shrink it. I closed my eyes. For the first time since sending that message, I didn't feel alone in it. Not invisible. Sane. And that changed everything. Right now, as I'm telling you this, my family is sitting in that restaurant in Philadelphia. White tablecloth. Crystal glasses. Expensive wine. Probably halfway through dessert. They think they chose the bigger event. They think they made the obvious decision. And I'm standing backstage at the Kennedy Center in Washington, D.C., waiting for my name to be called in front of 2,000 people. They have no idea what's about to hit their phones. So let me ask you, if you were in my position, would you text them before you walked on stage? Or would you let them find out with everyone else? All right, let's go back to that night. The Kennedy Center did not feel real. That was my first thought when the car pulled up to the entrance. Marble steps, tall glass panels reflecting the Washington skyline, security detail, production trucks lined along the curb with satellite dishes aimed at the sky. This wasn't a school gym. This wasn't a district banquet. This was national. Inside, the grand ballroom stretched wide under crystal chandeliers that cast a gold sheen over 2,000 seated guests. Round tables dressed in white linen. Flags positioned behind the stage. Multiple camera cranes gliding silently overhead. C-SPAN banners. CNN cameras. Education correspondents adjusting earpieces. A production assistant clipped a microphone pack to my jacket. Mr. Tartar, you'll enter from stage left when your name is called. Follow the spotlight. Mr. Carter. Not Danny. Not Daniel. Not the one who could have done more. Mr. Carter. I nodded once. Through the curtain. I scanned the front row. There she was. Grandma Evelyn. Navy suit. Pearl earrings. Back straight. A placard in front of her seat read Guest of Honor, Evelyn Brooks Guest of Honor. My grandmother wasn't just attending. She was being recognized. The weight of that sank in slowly. The Secretary of Education stepped to the podium. Tonight, we honor educators who redefine what it means to lead. He began. Applause rolled across the room. My phone vibrated in my inside pocket. A message from Grandma. Proud of you. Let them see. Let them see. In Philadelphia, at that exact moment, my father was raising a glass to Claire. He was likely saying, to real success, to measurable achievement. Backstage, my palms were steady, not because I wasn't nervous, because something had shifted. I wasn't here to prove anything to them. I was here because I had earned it. The secretary continued. These finalists represent the best of American education teachers who go beyond curriculum, who change trajectories, who see potential where others see problems. I thought of Marcus, 15 years old, hoodie up, falling asleep in the back row because he worked nights. I thought of the hundreds of kids who had walked into my classroom convinced they were already behind. I didn't rescue them. I stayed. The spotlight operator glanced toward me. Mr. Carter, you're up. My name echoed across the ballroom. Daniel Carter. Philadelphia. Pennsylvania. The curtain parted. I stepped into the light. And somewhere, 300 miles away, my family had no idea the world was about to meet me. The applause faded as I reached my place beside the other finalists. Michael from New Mexico. Priya from Michigan. David from Georgia. All of us standing under lights bright enough to erase the shadows. The secretary adjusted the microphone. Before announcing this year's recipient, he said, each finalist will hear from a former student whose life they helped shape. My pulse kicked once. Hard. Please welcome Marcus Hill. For a second, I couldn't breathe. Marcus, the kid who used to sit in the back corner with his hood up and his shoulders tight like the world might swing at him if he relaxed. The man walking onto that stage now was 6 feet tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a tailored Navy suit. A Johns Hopkins badge hung from his breast pocket. Second-year pediatric surgery resident. The room went still. When I was 16, Marcus began. Voice steady but thick at the edges. I was homeless. 2,000 people held their breath. My mom was incarcerated. I was sleeping in my car behind a grocery store. I'd stopped planning for the future. I figured I wouldn't live long enough to need one. His eyes lifted, found mine. Then I walked into Mr. Carter's classroom. I kept my face neutral, my jaw locked tight. He noticed things. Marcus continued. That I never brought lunch. That I flinched when someone moved too fast. That I never talked about home. He swallowed. He never called attention to it. Never made me feel like a project. He just stayed. A murmur rippled through the audience. He bought me notebooks without saying they were for me. Left food in his desk drawer like it was just extra. Drove me to scholarship interviews. Sat with me while I filled out financial aid forms I didn't understand. My vision blurred slightly. I didn't wipe it away. I'm a doctor today because of him, Marcus said. But more than that, I learned what kind of man I wanted to be by watching him. The room shifted again. He didn't teach me how to be tough, Marcus added quietly. He taught me how to be steady. There's a difference. Something in my chest tightened. He showed up every day. No cameras. No applause. Just consistency. When I got into Johns Hopkins, he was the first person I called. Not because he was my teacher, because he was the first adult who believed I wasn't already lost. Silence. Then Marcus turned fully toward me. "Mr. Carter," he said, voice breaking now. "You didn't save my life with one big moment. You saved it with 1,000 small ones." The audience rose. 2,000 people on their feet. The sound was physical. It hit like a wave. Marcus stepped toward me. We didn't hug. We shook hands. Firm. Solid. Equal. His grip said what words didn't have to. "You mattered." And for the first time in my life, I felt the full weight of that truth land, not from my family, but from someone whose life proved it. The standing ovation slowly settled. Marcus returned to his seat. The Secretary of Education stepped back to the podium, holding a cream envelope sealed in gold. "The 4 finalists you see before you represent excellence at the highest level," he said, "but only one will receive the title of National Teacher of the Year." The room tightened. You could feel it. Priya reached for my hand briefly. Michael closed his eyes. David whispered something under his breath that sounded like a prayer. I didn't move. I'd already won something that night. The secretary broke the seal. A pause. 2,000 people holding still. "The 2024 National Teacher of the Year is..." I heard my own heartbeat. Daniel Carter's Far. Philadelphia. Pennsylvania. For a second, nothing happened. It felt like the air left the room. Then it exploded. Applause crashed forward. People stood. Cameras swung toward me. The spotlight narrowed. Priya shoved my shoulder lightly. "Go," she whispered through tears. I walked. It didn't feel dramatic. It felt heavy. Earned. The secretary extended his hand. "Congratulations, Mr. Carter." Flashbulbs ignited. Somewhere in the front row, Grandma Evelyn was crying openly now, not softly, not politely. Proud. The trophy was placed in my hands. Crystal. Solid. Cold. The weight surprised me. Not because of the glass. Because of the years behind it. Years of grading papers past midnight. Of buying winter coats for kids who didn't have them. Of sitting in parent conferences where hope felt thin. The secretary leaned closer. Low enough that the microphones wouldn't catch it. "Your grandmother is formidable," he said. "When she nominates someone, we listen." I glanced toward her. She didn't nod. She didn't need to. At the bottom of the giant screen behind us, a CNN banner appeared. "Breaking Philadelphia teacher Daniel Carter named National Teacher of the Year, nominated by legendary educator Evelyn Brooks." Millions were seeing that headline, including 3 people sitting in a French restaurant 300 miles away. And this time, they weren't in the room. "Philadelphia. Sedem dvain petdeset peram. M." My father wiped his mouth with a linen napkin and reached for his phone the same way he always did between courses. Habit. Control. Information. A CNN notification sat at the top of his screen. "Breaking Philadelphia teacher named National Teacher of the Year." He almost ignored it. Then he saw the photo. His hand froze up. It was me. On stage. Trophy in hand. Shaking hands with the Secretary of Education. Behind me. Projected 20 feet high National Teacher of the Year, 2024. Richard Mom noticed his face. "What does it mark it drop?" He didn't answer. He turned the phone toward her. Her expression drained. "That's Daniel." Claire grabbed the phone. Her wine glass tipped over. Red spreading across the white tablecloth, like something symbolic. "No," she said quickly. "This must be. It's Liv." Ethan said quietly. "That's CNN's lower third." Claire scrolled. More images. Me at the podium. Marcus speaking. A headline update, nominated by legendary Principal Evelyn Brooks. Legendary Dad whispered. Around them. The restaurant continued. Waiters moved. Laughter rose from other tables. Cutlery clinked. The Carter family sat frozen in the middle of it. Then the phones started ringing. Dad's first. Frank Morrison, his golf partner. Rich just saw your son on national television. Why aren't you there? Voicemail. Another call. Man. Washington's only a few hours away. You must be proud. Voicemail. Mom's phone lit up next. Church friends. Book club. Neighbors? Where are you watching from? Claire's phone was worse. Text after text from colleagues. Your brother just won National Teacher of the Year. Why didn't you mention this? So cool. You must be there. Then one message stood out. Joanna Price. The same Joanna who'd been at Claire's lunch earlier that week. The one who used to be an education reporter. Funny. At lunch today you called it just a teacher appreciation thing. What changed? Claire's face went pale. Within seconds. The comments stacked. Wait, what receipts? Yikes. Joanna posted the quote. Not a screenshot. Exact wording. At lunch today, Claire Carter said her brother's award was meaningless and that teaching wasn't a real career. I was there. 3 women from that table liked the comment. Another added. Can confirm. It was uncomfortable. Claire deleted her congratulatory Instagram post. Too late. Screenshots were already circulating. Twitter. LinkedIn. Someone even clipped the CNN segment side by side with her earlier comment. Dad's phone buzzed again. This time from his firm's managing partner. Richard. Clients are asking why your family wasn't present at the ceremony. Everything all right? Mom lowered her phone slowly. A woman from a nearby table approached. Gray hair. Kind eyes. Excuse me? She said gently. Are you Daniel Carter's family? We just saw him win on TV. Dad forced a smile. Yes. Very proud. She looked around the table. Oh. She said softly. Why aren't you in Washington? Silence. It's only a 3-hour drive. She added. No one answered. Understanding settled across her face. Not anger. Judgment. She returned to her table without another word. And in that moment, in a room full of strangers, my family felt something they'd never felt before. Small? Back in Washington. The applause had finally settled. I stood at the podium, trophy resting against the wood, lights warm against my face. The teleprompter in front of me glowed with the speech I had prepared. Safe words, careful statistics, polite gratitude. I looked at it, then I looked past it. Growing up, I began, my voice steady. I was told that success looked a certain way. The room quieted. It looked like corner offices, like compensation packages, like titles that fit neatly on business cards. A few heads nodded. I was told that teaching was noble, but small, that it was something you did if you couldn't do something bigger. A faint ripple in the crowd. For a long time, I believed that, not because it was true, but because the people closest to me said it enough times that it started to sound like fact. I let the silence stretch. But here's what I've learned. Success isn't measured in income brackets. It's measured in impact. It's measured in the student who stops believing he's disposable, and the kid who decides to apply for college because someone stayed late to help him fill out the forms. In the quiet moments, no one broadcasts. I glanced toward the front row. My grandmother sat straight-backed, eyes bright. One person believed in me before the world ever did. My grandmother, Evelyn Brooks. The camera found her. She pressed a hand to her heart. She taught me something I carry into every classroom. Your worth isn't determined by the people who refuse to see it. It's determined by what you choose to build anyway. I looked directly into the main camera now. To every teacher watching, tonight your work matters. To every person who's been told their path is too small, too soft, too insignificant, it isn't. Find the people who see you clearly. And if you can't find them yet, be that person for someone else. The applause rose again. Longer this time. Stronger. I didn't mention my parents. I didn't have to. Everyone watching understood who wasn't in the room. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't speaking to be heard by them. I was speaking because I already knew who I was. Consequences don't always arrive loudly. Sometimes they settle in quietly, and then they stay. 3 days after the ceremony, my father walked into Marin Golf Club for his usual Tuesday round. Same locker, same group, same ritual, except the tone was different. Rich Frank Morrison called out across the room. National Teacher of the Year's dad. A few chuckles. Not warm ones. Must have been tough missing that. Another man added. Washington's not exactly overseas. Dad gave a tight smile. We had a prior commitment to celebrate Claire. Someone said. Yeah, we saw that. A pause, hell of a trade-off. No one argued. No one defended him. On the course, conversations drifted back to it repeatedly. She mentioned someone who believed in her. That wasn't you. Right? Didn't look like you were in the front row. The teasing wasn't cruel. It was worse. It was disappointed. The image Dad had built for decades decisive. Family first. Strategic had a crack in it now. And cracks spread. Mom had her own version of it. At her charity luncheon that week. The topic wasn't fashion or fundraising. It was my speech. That line about worth. One woman said, dabbing at her eyes. So powerful. Were you there? Another asked. Mom hesitated. We watched from home. Oh. Someone replied. That's surprising. She felt it. The shift. The quiet recalibration of how people saw her. Then there was Claire. Her deleted post had already circulated. LinkedIn threads dissected it. Legal Twitter had opinions. An education nonprofit her firm represented quietly requested reassignment on their case. It's not disciplinary. The senior partner told her. It's optics. Optics. The word lingered. Reputation wasn't just about billable hours. It was about alignment. About perceived values. The firm wasn't angry. They were cautious. And caution spreads fast in corporate spaces. Even Ethan felt it. At a networking dinner, someone joked, careful what you say about teachers these days. It was light, but not forgettable. Meanwhile, screenshots of my CNN interview continued circulating. Parents emailed the school. Former students posted photos from years ago. Mr. Carter believed in me. Mr. Carter stayed late. Mr. Carter showed up. The narrative solidified quickly, and narratives are powerful. Because once the world decides who you are, it's hard to argue with it. My family had spent 33 years defining me as small. The country had just defined me as significant. And the difference between those two realities was no longer private, it was public. And public shifts have weight. No screaming match. No dramatic collapse. Just a steady, quiet recalculation. Of value. Of status. Of who mattered. And who had been wrong. 2 weeks after Washington, I agreed to dinner at my parents' house. Not because they insisted. Because I was ready. The house looked the same brick exterior. Trimmed hedges. The same brass knocker I'd walked past 1,000 times growing up. But when I stepped inside, something felt different. Quieter. They were already seated in the living room. Dad in his armchair. Mom on the sofa. Claire perched upright. Hands folded, like she was waiting for a deposition to begin. No one stood. Daniel. Dad said, clearing his throat. We need to talk. I stayed standing. About what? Mom twisted her hands. About everything. I nodded once. Okay. Dad leaned forward. We didn't realize how significant the ceremony was. I held his gaze. The invitation spelled it out. We thought. Mom began. That it was small. I finished calmly. Claire crossed her arms. You're acting like we committed a crime. I didn't say that. Then what do you want? She snapped. An apology. Fine. I'm sorry we didn't go. The words were sharp, efficient, defensive. I shook my head. I'm not here for an apology. Dad frowned. Then what is this? I took a breath. Steady. Controlled. For 33 years. I said, I've tried to earn something from you. Respect. Approval. Recognition. I thought if I achieved enough, you'd eventually see it. No one interrupted. I sent that invitation hoping just once you'd show up, without comparing me to Claire. Claire's jaw tightened. This isn't about comparison. She said. It always has been. Silence. Dad shifted in his chair. You chose a different path. Yes. And we supported you. You tolerated me. The word landed harder than I expected. Mom's eyes filled. That's not fair. I met her. Gaze. When was the last time you asked about my classroom? She opened her mouth. Closed it. When was the last time you visited the school? No answer. You've celebrated every promotion Claire's ever had. You've flown across the country for her conferences. You skipped my graduate ceremony early. Dad's voice hardened. Traffic, but you made it to her firm dinner. I said evenly. The room tightened. I wasn't yelling. That made it worse. Claire stood abruptly. You're being dramatic. No. I said quietly. I'm being clear. Dad rose to his feet, reclaiming physical height. You're overreacting. We made a mistake. A mistake is forgetting a call. I replied. You read the invitation. You saw exactly what it was. You decided dinner was more important. That's not fair. Mom whispered. It is. The truth doesn't need volume. It just needs steadiness. I slipped my hands into my coat pockets to stop them from shaking. I'm not cutting you off. I continued. But I am changing how access to me works. Claire scoffed. Access, yes. Dad's expression hardened. We're your parents. And I'm your son. I said, not your afterthought. That landed. For a moment, something like regret flickered across his face. But pride is stubborn. So what are you saying, he asked. I'm saying I won't compete for respect anymore. The room went still. I'll come to family events when I'm treated like I belong. I'll answer calls when I feel like it. I won't rearrange my life to chase approval that may or may not show up. Mom wiped her eyes. You're hurting us. I've been hurt for years. I replied. Quietly. Dad's voice lowered. You think this award changes everything? No. I met his eyes directly. It changes nothing about who I am. It just made it visible. Silence stretched long enough to feel uncomfortable. Good. Some discomfort was overdue. Claire looked away first. Mom stared at her hands. Dad exhaled slowly. You're serious, he said. Yes. I moved toward the door. Daniel. Mom called softly. I paused. We are proud of you, she said. I studied her face. Then act like it. I replied. I opened the door. Cool air rushed in. I'm not walking away. I added. I'm just not standing in the same place anymore. And this time, when I stepped outside, I didn't look back. 6 months later, spring light poured through the windows of my new apartment. 2 bedrooms. Brick walls. High ceilings. Not extravagant, just solid. Intentional. The award came with a financial stipend I hadn't expected. Enough for a down payment. Enough to move out of the modest 1-bedroom Dad used to call temporary. Now, when I made coffee in the morning, I didn't feel like I was passing through my own life. I felt rooted. Room 214 at Jefferson Middle School looked different too. There was a plaque near the door, now National Teacher of the Year, Daniel Carter. The students insisted on decorating around it with sticky notes. Still, our teacher though. Don't go Hollywood on us. I didn't. I was still there, at 7:15 a.m., still staying after school, still doing the work. Marcus called in March. Dr. Carter, he joked. Careful, I replied. That's your title, not mine. He laughed. I matched pediatric surgery at Stanford. I closed my eyes for a second. That's elite, I said quietly. You're the first person I wanted to tell. That mattered more than any trophy. 2 weeks later, I stood at the National Education Association conference in front of 3,000 teachers, delivering a keynote on redefining success. No anger, no bitterness, just clarity. In April, I was invited to the White House Rose Garden, a tradition for National Teachers of the Year. The president shook my hand. Thank you for what you do, he said. For a brief second, I wondered if Dad was watching. Then I realized something important. It didn't matter. My family still called. Mom more than Dad. Claire occasionally. I answered when I wanted to. That was the difference. There was no desperation in me anymore. No waiting. One afternoon, a small envelope arrived in the mail. Cream paper. Recognizable handwriting. Dad. I opened it at the kitchen counter. Daniel. I was wrong. About your career. About what matters. About you. I don't expect anything in return. I just needed to say that. Dad, I read it twice. 6 months ago. That letter would have undone me. Now it didn't. Not because it meant nothing, but because it wasn't oxygen anymore. I set it beside the framed photo from Washington, Grandma Evelyn and me. Both of us laughing through tears. A documentary crew had filmed us last week. 2 generations of educators. Legacy. Impact. The story wasn't about revenge. It was about clarity. Outside my window, cherry blossoms were starting to open. Every school year begins with blank pages. Every spring reminds you growth is quiet before it's visible. I didn't need my father's approval to feel complete. I had my students, my purpose, my peace. And for the first time in my life, that was enough. Looking back, there are 3 things this journey taught me. The first is this: your worth is not determined by the people who refuse to see it. Sometimes the people closest to you are the last to recognize what you've built. Not because it isn't real, but because it doesn't fit the version of success they understand. If you measure yourself by their standards, you'll spend your entire life feeling small. Find the people who see you clearly. Build with them. The second boundaries are not rejection. When I told my family I was changing how access to me works, I wasn't cutting them off. I was protecting what I've built. Boundaries aren't walls meant to punish. They're structure. They define what respect looks like. And without them, resentment fills the space. You can love people and still refuse to shrink for them. And the third, the one that took me the longest to understand. The best revenge is living well. Not loudly, not bitterly, not performatively, just steadily. You don't need a dramatic confrontation to win. Sometimes the most powerful response is quiet consistency. Let the results speak. Let the impact speak. Let the life you build speak. That night in Washington didn't change who I was. It revealed who I'd been all along. And once you see yourself clearly, no one else's doubt carries the same weight again. If you've made it this far, thank you. Stories like this aren't really about awards. They're about identity, about what happens when you stop chasing approval and start building something meaningful instead. I want to hear from you. Have you ever had a moment where you finally stopped competing for someone's validation, where you chose yourself calmly, firmly, without burning everything down? Drop your story in the comments. I read more of them than you think. If this resonated, consider subscribing. There's another story linked in the description about a son who walked away from a family business and what happened when they needed him back. I think you'll relate. And remember, content created by the Boundaries and Bloodlines team is for entertainment purposes only. Do not replicate real-life actions without careful consideration. See you in the next story.